Does that make you feel like all blah?
Oh, for sure.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am honored to be here to share space with one of my favorite girls in the world, Tavi Gevinson.
Oh my
She
gosh.
is an actor, an outspoken feminist. She's also an entrepreneur, and most notably, for me at least, she's the editor-in-chief of one of my favorite online destinations, Rookie Mag, which is an online destination specifically built for teenage girls. And she's also a role model to so many people, including myself, even though I'm like double your age. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to watch you publicly transform and evolve in front of all of us. And to me, what's most powerful, I think, about Tavi is she is the living embodiment of what is possible in a feminist world when girls are empowered to share their vision and voice with the world. And so today I want to have a conversation about your vision and your voice.
Thank you, Janet.
Of course. This is like our second public conversation. So I feel like the first one was so
Yes.
small and intimate just for Rookie Mag people, but this one's for the world. And so in the last year, you've graduated high school, moved to New York, got your first apartment, made your Broadway debut. What is it like what's the most amazing thing about being a New Yorker?
About being a New Yorker, I just like how quickly time moves. Like, it's a lot easier to just keep going. I feel like it's really cliched to be like, I'm a New Yorker now, so I hate Los Angeles. But I do, like, now that I've, like, spent time in other places, I feel like when you're, like, spiraling or having an existential crisis, like, you look around and the landscape is like, yeah, you're alone. And in New York, it's like, shut up, keep going, you're fine.
Well, you have to keep going because you have to pay that rent of your West Village apartment, right?
You have to pay the rent, and it's like, look at all of these people, they don't care. And, like, they have their lives. It's great. It's really healthy, I think.
And also, as a new New Yorker, you've had one of the most, probably, I'd say the quintessential New York experience being that you were on stage on Broadway in This Is Our Youth, and you said that it was like having emotions in public for 2 hours. But having an audience isn't necessarily new for you. What was so different about the stage versus writing?
Well, I think in writing, it's such a blatant expression of the self, and for me especially, it's always been, like, when I wrote my blog, it was just, they were just musings, and with Rookie, there is more of a purpose to serve the girls who are reading it, and when you're on stage in this capacity, your only responsibility is to, like, telling the story, and you're kind of protected by this character. Mm-hmm. And, like, there would be times when I'd be like, oh no, the show's not going well, everyone seems kind of, like, the vibe is bad, I feel like I've alienated the audience, and then I'd remember, like, yes, because this is a really uncomfortable, awkward scene, and you're playing an alienating person, and it was really fun to have to force myself to, like I would think of, I'd be like, be Laura Dern, because I would think of her in Enlightened, and how she's so uncomfortable, and, like, that's really fun to just try and be really cringy, and I don't know, in that way it was, like, really freeing, because it's not about you.
Yeah, and so much, it must have been kind of refreshing in a sense, and there must have been so much freedom taking on another character that was other than yourself, which you've kind of been so vulnerable and public about since you were like a tween.
Right, and you get kind of tired of yourself, and I think that, and it's also just what's so beautiful about doing a show like that is that every day, no matter what kind of day you're having, like it's 7 p.m. and you have to do it, and you have to be super focused on this other person, and I was always in, like, an amazing mood by the end. I loved it.
And so how are you loving adulthood? You know, especially as, you know, Rookie Mag obviously is a space for teenage girls. How are you, as someone who is in young adult womanhood, how do you see your perspective shifting a little bit now that you're kind of writing for such a younger audience?
Yes. One thing I've noticed is that I feel like I started Rookie because I needed Rookie. And I feel less now that when I sit down to write for it, I'm like giving myself the advice I want to hear, which was basically what I did when I started it and I was in high school. And it's nice in a way to not need it as that kind of outlet anymore because I feel like now I can, in a way, it's a double-edged sword because if you're very concerned with what you're going through or what you need to hear, but it's for another audience, then I think, like, I feel like I wrote everything I had to for myself, and now I feel really passionate about it existing in the world because I know there are other things that other people need to hear, and it's so exciting to live here where I can actually, where I'm not just doing it from my bedroom on a computer, and I can, like, I meet, like, the other day, like, a Rookie reader on the train, and to get to actually interact with people and feel like it's this presence in the world is really exciting.
And how do you feel about it also being not just a destination? I know it's meant for teenage girls, but I know a lot of women in my own network who look to Rookie as their resource and guide, adult women.
Right. I think that's just sort of a testament to the fact that there aren't actually that many differences between teenagers and adults. Like, I think, like, I probably flatter myself by being like, oh, it's been such a long time since high school, I've changed so much. But I just, like, I have, like, the same hang-ups and anxieties or whatever. They've just been transferred to adult life. But I like it because I think, like, when I hear from adults that they use Rookie as a resource, they're never like, it brings me back to the good old days of high school. Like, they're like, oh, I still deal with this. These are human problems. Maybe you, when you're a teenager, you have it for the first time, or it's under different circumstances, or you feel it really strongly, but I don't, like, self-esteem or self-care or relationships or, I mean, all of these things, I don't think you ever get to a point where you're like, I'm done. I figured that out. I'm good. I mean, I wish you did, but yeah.
But you know, speaking of age, and I've always had this bizarre relationship. Our culture's so obsessed with youth. And I feel like sometimes when I hear about your story being soundbited to the world, it's often this fascination of like, look at this young girl who's done all this stuff. You know, and I feel like there's like not reverse ageism in it, but there is this sense of, as you're growing older, do you feel that kind of messaging around your age and then kind of the relationship with your age with what you've accomplished, do you feel that that's empowering, or do you get irked by it? Do you feel like it's fetishized?
Well, I have talked a little bit about how problematic I think it can be to fetishize youth, and at the same time I am kind of an example of someone who accomplished a lot at a young age. And I guess I feel so strongly about not coveting it because, like, we started rehearsals for This Is Our Youth in Chicago before I was even done with high school. Like, I've been accustomed to, like, a pretty unique pace, and now the show's over. I'm still, like, doing Rookie and doing lots of things that I love, but it has been a kind of settling in to, like, I don't know. I don't know how much of it is pressure I put on myself. I don't think anyone in the actual world is like, you still gotta do a lot. Like, I don't think people really care. But I guess the danger in coveting youth is that you're fighting a losing battle because you're literally aging every second. So as much as I love writing about and thinking about all the complexities of being young, I feel like I am constantly like, I can't wait to be over everything and, like, you know, care about other things, or I don't know.
Well, I guess I will offer this affirmation. It's that if you accomplish and do nothing else in your life, you've done enough.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. And so social media is huge, obviously. I think we met through Twitter probably first than anywhere else, which is where I meet everyone nowadays. How are your relationships? Is there differences between how you cultivate relationships online versus offline? Is there a difference for you in your generation?
That's so interesting. Well, for me, it's so blurred because online has also been like work, like, but when I guess, I think to some people, like I met a couple recently and they were adults and I asked how they met and they were really embarrassed to say Twitter. And I was like, no, for like people my age, it's like writing is like talking. Maybe not for everyone, but I don't think that it's necessarily that there's this huge facade that you're putting up or an identity you're creating. Like I feel like I've met lots of girls like through Rookie or social media where we're all kind of, there's a shared understanding, especially if you're like reading Rookie or in certain communities on Twitter or Tumblr, that like we all want each other to feel good and comfortable and like we can be ourselves. So I've experienced no like catfishing, but I think that's more and more normal for people my age.
And what do you think, as someone who is also very outspoken about serious issues online and publicly using your voice as a woman, we know that they can make you a target too online. It makes it easier for those who don't necessarily want to connect with you and your story, but want to tear you and your story down. What, I guess, words of advice and empowerment would you give to young women who are navigating those spaces online?
Well, there's a difference between constructive criticism and then useless trolling.
Yeah.
Yes. I think if a criticism stays with you and really bothers you, there might be some truth to it. I try to be honest with myself if that happens to me. But I feel like at this point, I just can't imagine letting something like that impact like what's going on in here or my personal life or it's like not real or there are so many degrees of separation between who you are, what you write, what they see, what they take in, what they shoot back. Like I'm able to have some distance from it. And I guess advice-wise, just like surround yourself with the opinions of people you trust. I think on social media, it's like how in our dreams, some people think that when there are other people in your dreams, they're different sides of you. I think when you see people online, unless they're people you know or they have a really strong identity that's established, you just see them as like pieces of you. So if I'm feeling down on myself and there's criticism, I'll be like, that person's probably really smart and knows exactly what they're talking about. And if there's something like positive, I'm like, well, that person's probably like a dummy. So like, I think being aware of how there's so much room for projection and you just have to be aware of it.
And you came to feminism at a very young age. What's your own definition of feminist?
I just believe in equality, and I feel like being a girl does not limit me in any way, and I don't want anyone else to feel limited by that either.
And how has your feminism evolved?
Oh, cool. Well, I think that when I started becoming interested in feminism and writing about it,
What was your gateway, first of all?
my gateway was probably other girls on the internet, bloggers, and then finding out, kind of becoming interested in like the aesthetic side of like Riot Girl and Sassy Magazine, but also feeling like the ethos really spoke to me. And probably the way that my feminism has evolved is just that, well, like I said, when I started Rookie, and I think this is also like being 14 or 15, like I think you're aware of the ways in which you're oppressed and the ways in which you need feminism. And the more I've just worked on it, maybe gotten older, interacted with the people who read and write for it, the more I become aware of how different all of these issues are for all women. And I get so frustrated when we assign like faces of feminism. And I remember one time having like a panic attack in school because I was on my phone and saw an article that was like, is Tavi girl power's last hope? And I was like, no, like, why me? But I think that the danger in that is not only that it puts pressure on poor victims like myself, but that it makes people who want an introduction to feminism feel like they have to identify with a version of it that, you know, only one person can really represent.
It's a danger and limitation of representation, of being called the voice of your generation.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. I think, and I just don't think, but that's why I think it's good that there can be a little more democracy in the ideas that get passed around online and the role models that people are able to find for themselves.
But being so public, how do you handle that duty of representation, though? It's there regardless, right? You're on covers of magazines. Young women, girls, older women, adult women look to you as the mouthpiece of a generation, despite you saying, I'm not, I'm just Tavi and I'm living publicly.
Well, anytime I think it's good to know which outlets I have to like be free and be creative, like acting or certain kinds of writing. And then when I work on Rookie, I know that that's not really it's not just like my outlet to be super expressive and experimental. And I guess I just am lucky to be surrounded by the women I work with, and I'm also surrounded by in my life to feel like I get enough different points of view that it isn't hopefully too limited to what I experience.
And finally, you once said you'll always be an outsider, but increasingly you've been brought inside. How do you feel that you're always going to center the marginalized, unheard girl inside of yourself?
What an annoying thing to say. I mean, I feel like that's... Well, the fact is, I have a theory about this because I think about it a lot. My friend and I were just going through like the whole back catalog of like Taylor Swift's music, and there's so much of that, and we were like, how is this, like, you know, she's so obviously like beautiful, and how was she like the underdog or the like friend that the guy didn't like, and I think it's so like the fake underdog or funderdog, like I could talk about that for so long. The best theory I have is a little depressing, which is just that the human condition is innately sort of lonely and isolating, so everyone feels a little like on the outside of something, and I think that that's why, but that's also why like people who we think of as successful or great artists can still produce work about that feeling. And I also think it's sort of like what bonds us in a way. So I mean, I live a somewhat charmed life. I don't feel like an outsider, but at the same time,
I still think you'll always be the coolest insider.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But I do think like I'm not going to college. Like you're always able to find things about your life that are different. And if you write enough, you can always find like a narrative to assign your own, like a problem for whatever you're feeling. So I think that is kind of natural, but I also feel sort of like comfortable in the world, and like I've been really lucky to have an audience of people who have allowed me to grow and change.
Well, thank you so much for letting us be lucky enough to share this space with you.
Thank you. Thanks.